Marenet is a lecturer in the Department of Journalism in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. Her research focuses on media ethics, newsroom ethnography, and the interplay between professional journalism and societal narratives. Marenet is also very interested in the scholarship of teaching and learning, and she, for example, received a Teaching Excellence Award as Developing Teacher in 2020. I'm not going to say more about her, as in line with the autoethnographic approach to her talk, Marenet is going to introduce you further to her personal context herself. So I'm going to hand over to you, Marenet.
Thank you very much, Karen. I'm just going to show my face for 1 minute because I find it interesting or better to be able to engage, but then I'm going to switch off my camera, colleagues. So let me greet everyone. Thank you, Gerda, for the opportunity. And thank you, colleagues, very much for joining me on this journey of reflection about the scholarship of teaching and learning. I will be talking to program renewal, specifically the development of a knowledge skills module for first-year students using an autoethnographic lens. As the authors cited here argue, the issue of program renewal should be an essential item on our curricular agenda, defined here as the constant review, change and implementation of university qualifications. We should view program renewal as a response to a variety of factors and needs, both internal and external. As everyone with an interest in the scholarship of teaching and learning would know, the need for constructive alignment, as captured by the cycle on this slide, is key to learning design and by implication then also to program renewal. I'm not going to discuss this cycle in detail. Suffice to say, one should always work with the end in mind when designing learning opportunities for students. In other words, what are the outcomes or goals of the learning process? These goals are usually captured as learning outcomes in our course outlines and the infamous Form A's and B's that need to be completed when instituting new programs and modules. I have structured today's talk around 4 discussion points. Please indulge me as a journalist at heart with the pithy catchphrases I used. Firstly, I want to talk a little bit about why I chose to look at the development of the knowledge skills first year module through the lens of autoethnography for this specific presentation. Secondly, I want to show that we are all in this together by highlighting the need for participatory curriculum design. Thirdly, I want to clear up some confusion about how academic literacy, information literacy, and digital literacy can be aligned. And finally, I want to explain why the name change was proposed. This brings me to my first signpost, why I chose autoethnography as a departure point for reflecting on this specific program renewal exercise. As social scientists, I find ethnography in general to be a very important research approach for testing the pulse of various diverse communities. Autoethnography, as a branch of ethnography then, aims to connect personal experiences with the social cultural world you are studying. I did not at first set out to approach the renovation of the information skills module as an autoethnographic exercise. But as newsroom ethnographer, I could not help to seize the opportunities for self-reflection along the way. So in the spirit of autoethnographic research and in line with the definitions displayed here, I will approach the various elements of my discussion from the perspective of the self and the social. As former journalist, I also do not like to put myself in the story when the story itself is so important. But for transparency's sake, and in line with autoethnographic methods, let me tell you a little bit about myself. After I completed my undergraduate degree in publishing and my journalism honours, I started my career as a print journalist in 2002. At the end of 2009, I joined the University of Pretoria's journalism program, where I taught undergraduate and postgraduate students and helped with curriculum renewal. I then joined my, what I like to call, academic home at Stellenbosch University in 2015. I've been the convener of the postgraduate, practice-orientated journalism degree since 2016, and have led a dedicated program renewal exercise with this BA Honours Journalism degree in 2018. In the same year, I graduated with a PhD, for which I did an ethnographic exploration of an Afrikaans online newsroom. This naturally further cemented my belief that ethnography can be successful, especially when the need for self-reflection arises. I've also been the chair of the Teaching and Learning Committee in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences since 2019, which allowed me exposure to the various policies and guidelines around teaching and learning at Stellenbosch. I also joined the faculty's program renewal reference group in 2019. My involvement in this reference group on behalf of the Department of Journalism eventually led to the decision around mid-2020 that we as department will act as convener of the renewed compulsory first year module currently known as Information Skills. I'm now personally leading the renewal process in anticipation of the implementation of the new module in 2023. In brief, and keeping in mind that I do not have enough time today to interrogate the broader higher education context in South Africa, I will now mention some of the key developments in the history of this specific storyline. The program renewal process in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences is aligned with a broader program renewal project at the university that stretches across many of the faculties. The questions around the relevance of the information skills module was first raised in January 2019, with various shortcomings of the current iteration of the module being raised by members of the reference group. From May 2019 onwards, discussions around the information skills module intensified, with very specific suggestions around the need to include academic writing and referencing skills, as well as digital citizenship skills. Margriet de Villiers, now at the Centre for Learning Technologies, and Annie Burger, Secretariat of the Academic Offering Committee in our faculty, did a lot of work at that stage through setting up example curricula and gathering feedback from former and current students. In March 2020, as I said before, it was decided that I would be responsible for building a roadmap for the future of the module. Naturally, the impact of COVID-19 delayed some of these discussions and also led to the decision to postpone implementation of the module to 2023. In October and November 2020, I did presentations on the proposed new structure and approach to the module to key stakeholders within the faculty and across the university. At this stage, we are fine-tuning the specific content of the various key focus areas of the new knowledge skills module in preparation for filling in all the relevant paperwork to get the module accredited for 2023. The references to the social context surrounding the proposed new knowledge skills module leads me to the second important discussion point in this presentation, the need for participatory curriculum design. I'm not going to dwell on the detail contained in this slide. A lot of what I've included here points back to my previous discussion about my personal context and the social environment relevant to the development of the knowledge skills module. The aim of including it is mostly to indicate that I'm still using an autoethnographic lens to engage with the history and future of this module. What I would like to highlight here is the fact that my teaching philosophy is grounded in reflective practice and the need for agile responses to constructive feedback. In my teaching portfolio, I speak about teaching as a reciprocal act, meaning that I learn as much from the students and colleagues as they do from me. My personal vision thus aligns with the approach taken by our faculty's program renewal reference group to ensure participatory curriculum design. Participation in this instance was encouraged not only by the meetings of the reference group itself, but also through creating opportunities for input from all faculty members and distributing surveys amongst students. The authors cited here argue that the participatory approach to curriculum development and reform provides both opportunities and challenges. On the one hand, these authors contend, such an approach can result in the discovery of more sustainable and relevant solutions to contemporary educational challenges. However, they add, the management of curriculum development programs and processes becomes complex when various partners are engaged. I would concur that participatory curriculum design calls for continuous consultations with stakeholders and some diplomatic skills. Yet I would argue that program renewal that is not premised on participatory curriculum design can lead to many misunderstandings and a lack of buy-in along the way. So as convener, I've always worked from the starting point that the process should involve as many people as possible who share the vision for the renewed module and who are willing to provide constructive input. To emphasize the consultative processes involved in the renewal of this module up to this point, I've included extracts from discussions during program renewal reference group workshops as captured by Annie Burger. In summary, there was a need and a feeling for continued renewal as led by one specific department, which should address a few broad areas, including writing skills, engagement with sources, and digital literacy. I agree with the specific comment that the content should be taught by keen and inspirational educators. We have also decided that a focus on blended learning will work best in this case. Again, I'm certainly not going to read all the extracts presented here from the qualitative feedback gathered from students and alumni in our faculty. Just to highlight a few notes. Students want to learn how to use computers while actually working on computers, which is seemingly not the case at the moment. Students want to learn how to better express themselves in academic register and want guidance on referencing. They also want more instructions in how to navigate the library's resources. They want to know how to use Excel, some mentioning that they want to use it to create simple things like a monthly budget. They also wanted help with very practical things, such as creating a CV. It has become crystal clear to me that participatory curriculum design is the best approach for redesigning this module. The consultative process in developing the detailed curriculum for the new module is therefore ongoing. I am confident that working with colleagues across our faculty, as well as colleagues from the Centre for Teaching and Learning and the Centre for Learning Technologies, can only serve to improve student learning, as suggested by the authors cited here. Next, I want to move on to a brief discussion on the somewhat confusing points of agreement and divergence between academic literacy, information literacy, and digital literacy. Once again, I'm not going to dwell on the detail contained on this slide. I just want to continue emphasizing the reflective stance I have been taking to the development of the module, especially more recently. In this regard, it is worth mentioning that my research, teaching, and supervision experiences, as set out on the left here, are all informing my reflections on and approach to the development of this module. In the spirit of participatory curriculum design, and in reference to the social context here, I also have to thank, amongst others, Dr. Karen Katal-Holden from the Centre for Teaching and Learning, Margriet de Villiers from the Centre for Learning Technologies, Dr. Taran Bernard and Shona Lombard from the Extended Degree Program, Marlene Hendricks and Lucinda Roth from the library, my colleagues from the Journalism Department, and especially Annie Burger, who has offered a service as learning designer for this module to ensure a smooth blended learning approach. Everyone mentioned here, with the support from our Vice Dean for Teaching and Learning, Professor Pieter Fourie, and the manager of the Program Renewal Project in our faculty, Marius Swart, have made renewing this module so much easier for me to manage as a course convener. All these key stakeholders understand the value of using this first-year foundational module to equip students with the type of 21st century literacy skills they need to thrive in the academic context, but also in the world of work. This brings me to a definition of what literacy in the broadest sense refers to. I want to highlight two key things from the definitions on the screen here. First, one should view literacy as key to what we actually do with text and technologies. In other words, we should connect literacy to what people do in everyday life. I would argue this is especially important in the higher education environment, where students should be armed with both critical thinking skills and the types of skills that can help them become active citizens in the broader society. Through the second definition, it becomes clear that literacy is not a unitary phenomenon. In other words, we should interrogate what we mean by literacy and what types of literacies are relevant to our context. What does this mean for what we are trying to do in revising the current information skills module? In my view, we cannot get bogged down in definitions, but rather we should work with what we want the students to be able to do after completing the module. In simple terms then, we want to focus on the learning outcomes of the module rather on what the differences are between various forms of literacy. But as promised in the marketing material for this Auxin, let me at least briefly present some definitions of academic, information, and digital literacy that can be found in literature on the topic. In terms of academic literacy, I will highlight the following. Students should be able to understand, interpret, and develop acceptable ways of representing knowledge, also subject-specific knowledge. Information literacy, when viewed as a catalyst for learning, means that people must be able to use the information to become socially and civically involved in their communities and the world of work. And finally, when digitally literate, a student should be able to comfortably and creatively engage with technology in all aspects of their lives. Naturally then, there are nuanced differences between academic, information, and digital literacy. But for me, all these types of literacies comes down to how to best apply skills. As the title of this discussion suggests, one should move from accessing information to actually using it. Similarly, the authors cited here argue that one should be able to efficiently select knowledge from vast amount of information in order to effectively apply this knowledge in both a professional and personal capacity. This brings me to my final discussion point. Why the move then from information skills to knowledge skills? I have committed here the original sin we warn students against, to use the first definition on Google. Nevertheless, I found it a useful example of how the differences between information and knowledge can be captured. On the one hand, information is viewed, according to this definition, as facts provided or learned, or something that is conveyed. Moving to knowledge, we are still working with facts and information, but according to this definition, as acquired through experience or education. I especially like the definition of knowledge as the sum of what is known. Of course, calling knowledge the sum of what is known can be viewed as hyperbole. Yet should we not aim to instill this type of knowledge when preparing graduates with inquiring minds who are engaged citizens, dynamic professionals, and well-rounded individuals? Despite the perceived cynicism of my own discipline, with journalists being known for questioning everything as they should, I myself remain somewhat of an idealist. I believe we can prepare the type of graduate Stellenbosch University wants to send out into the world by building knowledge from the ground up. On a more practical level thus, we have been working towards the revision of information skills as summarized here by the current and initial new suggested yearbook skills. Again, I'm not going to dwell on what is at the screen, on the screen at the moment, just pointing out what is on the left is the current yearbook text. Today, I can reveal a more detailed summary of the intended learning outcomes as part of the continuing process of participatory curriculum design. First, we want students to be able to competently use software programs, as is the case with the current information skills module. Secondly, we want students to competently use the library's resources and to know how to pick relevant and credible sources. Thirdly, we want students to constructively and ethically engage with the work of other researchers, including using proper referencing techniques. And finally, closer to home for my own department, we want students to be able to navigate the online world as active digital citizens. The most recent version of the intended yearbook text thus looks as follows. Naturally, this is also still a work in progress, but to return to the concept of constructive learning design, we want to start with the outcomes in mind while designing this module. Before I conclude, I just want to mention a few things that are on the agenda as we build towards the implementation of the knowledge skills module in 2023. We are constantly reflecting on the challenges and opportunities this renewal process offers. As is evident from this discussion, I find engagement across departments and across faculties paramount to successful program renewal. We are also aiming to fine-tune the constructive alignment of the learning design and the proposed learning outcomes. Developing assessment opportunities for a group of students that will total at least 1,200 will be one of the biggest challenges going forward. We will also start building a Sunlearn community to facilitate the blended learning approach. And then finally, and perhaps somewhat controversially, I want to end off with this quote, which for me captures the need for reciprocal teaching and learning, as is my teaching philosophy. Digital citizenship in higher education should be explored through the perspective of students themselves and their lived experience of digital technologies in higher education, rather than being solely the outcome of armchair theorizing. So let's get out of those armchairs, colleagues, and engage with our colleagues and our students. I thank you.
Marenet, thank you very much for this thought-provoking presentation and all the ground that you covered in an amazingly short time. And I can see that you're getting a lot of well-deserved applause there. You gave us an overview of both the history and the present stage and the future of the new knowledge skills module in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. And I think you really demonstrated how knowledge should be built from the ground up as it is happening in this course, and not just what is planned for the students doing it, but what you yourself are also learning about this process. You're learning it from this knowledge from the ground up. I think you showed us the importance of reflection on teaching, on curriculum renewal, self-reflection, and you also showed us the importance of collaboration and participatory design. And but the one sentence you used as, I think it was one of your key points at the beginning, which will stick with me, is "we are in this together." And I think that sounds almost like a motto, you know, to remember. Whatever else fails, we are in this together. And nobody, I think, in this conversation need to feel in their professional lives that they are alone. I also found it valuable how you stress the link between the self and the social world. So linking your professional identity and your personal identity, because I think that is often an aspect that lecturers or academics struggle with. and often there's a separation between the two. And that's also one of the benefits of doing self-reflection and reflecting on all the parts of your teaching. So thank you for covering all those different bases so eloquently and so clearly, and lifting out the nuances of what is quite an involved and complex process. So much appreciated. Thank you. Now, I would, as Marenet said, let's get out of the armchairs and sort of participate here in the discussion, colleagues. So, over to you. As yet, there were no questions in the chat. I haven't missed anything that I can see. Any questions from the floor, as it were, from the screens on the other side? Gerda.
Hi, thanks, Corin, and thanks, Marenet. I am curious about the process of getting student input in curriculum. A bit more detail. Maybe you can help us overcome the things that scare us about asking students what they should learn, please.
Gerda, thank you for that question. Ek wil net op hierdie stadium vra of dit okay is as ek in Afrikaans antwoord, of I think for
English. Sorry, English, please. Yeah.
No, I will go over to English. The thing about feedback, and I've written articles about this, and Karen, who is the senior advisor who has helped me a lot, and I have also spoken about this a lot. In the journalism department specifically, I have an approach in terms of focus groups, but we are lucky enough to have a small department. So I can tell the students, okay, Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock, we're going to sit together in a circle, and we are going to talk about not just your feelings, but how do you feel about specific aspects of the course? What can we improve? And I've been doing this since 2016 when I started as course convener for this course. So I have feedback from 5 years now, and it's continuous feedback. And then we adapt a little bit, and we listen to what they say, we weigh it up against what they actually should be knowing and what is just, students being students, and then we adapt. So for me, my feeling is that, yes, in the first place, you should not be afraid of criticism. Focus groups are especially difficult because the students then tell you what they think with you sitting there, not just anonymous feedback. For instance, a student with an undergraduate degree from UWC once told me that with my profile as a white Afrikaans woman, I should rather not be leading discussions about problematic race-related issues. And I took that to heart. I went to the Center for African Studies at UCT, and we engage with people from other universities even to give us input into our course. So for me also, I've been keeping a record of what our students are doing as alumni, and I've been, I've been using a lot of, like simple feedback forms on every small course that we do. So for me, it's kind of, it's essential. I don't really think you can build and do regular program renewal without regular student feedback, if that answers your question, Gerda.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Marenet. I want to go down to a question there from Gareth Arno, and I think you've partly answered the question already with regard to student input. And if you could give examples where input from students has made a big change in what you were thinking or doing. I think you've just given an example. Would you like to just maybe expand a little bit?
Yeah. Can I just want to,
yes.
I'll jump in and speak instead of just the text. I mean, what I'm meaning with the question is that I fully appreciate getting student input. And like, I'm totally for that, because as you've answered, it always helps you to kind of see those little things. What I'm just curious about is just, has there been any like a big moment, like where student feedback on like as a particular example where you've been like, whoa, that was something I had never ever thought of, and it's actually really made me rethink, the way that you're doing something. It's, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, Gareth, if I may. I think the example that I just used of a student who said, and the course was kind of called critical literacy, media and society and critical literacy. So we had a lot of engaging discussions, and this student who literally told me to my face, I don't want you to be talking about this. It made me sit back and reflect and think, okay, I think she's right.
Yeah.
In the current context in which we are living, and that made me literally go to a different university where there's a dedicated Center for African Studies and introduce a new submodule in the course.
Yeah.
So that students we don't only say that we are going to do it, but we literally went and restructured that specific critical thinking course to include an African perspective on views of the media. So that's quite a key example. But other simple things, like students would say, our course, I don't know, people don't all know our course, but it's really tough postgraduate honors course. And the students used to complain as time went on that they don't want to be in the class the whole time. Now we said, you know what? You need to be in the class, you need to learn and everything. But over time, we realized the reasons why they are saying they don't want to be in the class from every day, from 8 to 3:30. There are some valid reasons here. So we restructured the timetable, for instance. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks very much, both of you. I see a question here from Ms. Mahomedi. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Would you like to put your question?
Hi, firstly, I just wanted to say thank you so much. This really was an informative discussion, and it's something that I'm looking into at the moment. So just a bit of background, I'm from the law faculty, and I'll be lecturing third year and final year modules. The third year group is quite big, so 100 to 120 students per class. And I was just wondering, so these type of dialogues that you're having with your students in the smaller group is obviously great, and I think the feedback's a lot more meaningful as opposed to quizzes and surveys. I find that the students don't really take those as seriously because it's kind of just, a last resort, or I don't even know how to say it, but like an extra thing that they do just because they have to, so they don't give that much meaningful feedback. So I was wondering if you have any suggestions or advice in terms of how to facilitate with larger groups. I know practically it's quite difficult. Again, like I said, 100 to 120 students to actually slot a time to talk to everyone is difficult. And then apart from that, I know a lot of people don't feel as comfortable sharing in larger spaces. So yeah, that's basically my question.
Sorry, I didn't get your first name.
It's Samira Mohammadi.
Samira, thank you for that question. It's obviously a very big concern. When I started teaching at the University of Pretoria, I taught undergraduate big classes, and I am honest, I couldn't do the same kind of thing. We had to rely on more quantitative feedback. But I'm a social scientist with a qualitative, who use qualitative research methodology. I cannot really see myself relying only on quantitative feedback. That's the one issue. The other issue is, if I could make a suggestion, it would be, throw it open to the floor and ask students, are they willing to take part in a focus group? And then maybe out of 120, do 2 focus groups of 8 to 10 students each. That should, or you can go according to the, I don't want to say demographics of the class, but kind of randomly select students and ask them. Now, at this stage, I have to make a thing very clear. Ethical clearance is key if you are going to publish what you use in those focus groups. For a lot of what we do, we only use it for internal adjustments. So, but if you are going to do it with a bigger group and you are going to use some of that feedback for academic publishing later, it would be, I would really recommend you get ethical clearance, which usually as a staff member, it's not such a big process. But you get such wonderful feedback that it's really nice to be able to write something about it, especially if you do longitudinal research. Qualitative research can also be longitudinal. So yeah, in that case, I would suggest you either do surveys with open-ended questions included so that they can write a little bit. The feedback that I put up from the students that Annie and Margriet gathered, about, I think they talked to 3 different years of students who have taken the information skills module and some alumni. It was quantitative feedback, but there were also spaces, that's the part that I used, was only where they could actually write what they were thinking. So I would consider if that's the easiest way for you, or if that's the only option available to you, make sure that those surveys have space for reflection and qualitative feedback too, if that answers your question.
That does. Thank you so much. That's really helpful. And yeah, I think for the most part for now, it's more just to improve the module and how we can better it for the students. But like you said, inevitably, I think a lot of the feedback would actually be valuable. So thank you for bringing up the ethical clearance as well.
Thanks very much for the question and your clear answer, Marenet. Jean, I see your hand is up.
If I may, thank you. Hello, Marenet. It's so lovely to see you. I've had internet issues, so I've been in and out trying to get into this chat. And I think you and I have come quite a long way. And I really admire you for starting on this project and for engaging with the students in the way that you do. And also, as you explained, for listening to what the students need, and from a white lecturer, which is not an easy position, I do understand. What I'm interested in is whether there will be any reflection as part of the project on your part on the long-term issues, because I think that would actually make quite an interesting reflection, for want of another word, for what it is that you've learned, which would actually be so worthy to all other lecturers embarking on such a project. So how would you assess your own, well, not assess, but you know what I mean, assess your own learning over the process of the study?
Thank you very much, Jean, and it's so nice to have you here as well. Thank you for coming. I think I will not be able to stop myself from reflecting. I did my PhD using ethnographic methods, and somebody once told me, yes, like it's quite a lot. We won't do it as historians, but I wrote a whole chapter in my thesis only reflecting on my own positionality in the whole ethnographic research process. So I'm very keenly aware of how my own, I don't want to say just my own positionality will affect the way the module develops, but also the way I engage with my colleagues and students, and what I've learned, the mistakes I've made. Corinne, who knows my teaching philosophy well, because of all the help she's given me, knows that I'm very honest about the mistakes I make, and what I learned through the process, and how I try to better myself, because yes, like none of us is perfect, but at all. But I think being that kind of awareness the whole time of how does this process affect me, and how do I affect the process, will be very important all the way through.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Jean, and thank you again for that honest answer. Marenet, it will make for some fascinating reading, I'm sure. There was also a question in the chat from Charmaine about how you will assess the different knowledge skills in the module, Marenet.
Charmaine, you make things difficult because that will probably be the most difficult part. I think not least because of the amount of students, the number of students who will be taking this course, because it's a compulsory first year module in 3 faculties. So yeah, that won't be easy. But we have, with the help of Annie Burger, who I hope understands how grateful I am for her, I think she is around, we'll be building kind of what I like to call a Sunlearn community, where a lot of what happens will be online. So I don't want to say just multiple choice, but Margriet de Villiers has also taught me that one can set up a database with 150 or more questions around a specific topic. I'll use an example now. And then students only have to answer 20 questions. So even if you're sitting next to your buddy and you're trying to help each other, you will the statistical chances of you getting exactly the same questions is slim. But for example, if I think about digital citizenship, which I didn't talk a lot about today, but which is the part my own department will be presenting, it will involve things like spotting fake news, which is also a term we don't use in journalism. We talk about malinformation, disinformation, and misinformation. But, you know, kind of giving people something to read, whether it's a WhatsApp message or a tweet, and asking them to evaluate that question. So it will probably be a lot of online grading through multiple choice, but there will have to be some kind of summative assessment that tests everything from, do you know how to format a Word document, to can you use HU or Harvard? So yes, that is still an ongoing process. I think I said at the beginning, constructive alignment starts with the learning outcomes. So we're somewhere in the middle between the learning outcomes and the assessment at the moment in developing the module.
Thank you. Yeah, some kind of integrated assessment. I think that puts it well, Marenet.
Yeah, exactly. Some kind of integrated assessment where there won't be exams, but in the end, you will have to submit through Sunlearn, through Turnitin a small, this is kind of what I'm envisioning, but I want to emphasize again, this is a participatory approach. So it will still be, a kind of figured out between all the people involved in this module. And this is an open invitation for anybody with suggestions for what we can do to also send me an email, because I'm really open to suggestions. We've been working hard as kind of a smaller reference group in developing, kind of fine-tuning what we want to do. But there's always room for more input. That's my approach. And yeah, I think a summative integrated assessment at the end would be necessary, but then how do you grade it and who's going to do it? Those kind of questions is still on the horizon.
Especially questions around who is going to do what. And it's participatory design, yes, but when it comes to handing out the tasks, it can get very sticky. Are there any further questions? I think we've gone through all of them in the chat. Oh, there's a question from Anita. Anita, would you like to put it yourself?
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, thanks, Marenet. You're always so honest and prepared to make yourself vulnerable, and I really appreciate that, because I think often in academia, everyone is so conscious of their status and image, and so I really appreciate your sharing your vulnerability with us. But so I was just wondering, sometimes when I teach in this, in the course that I teach and coordinate in the introduction to the humanities, which is it's almost like the absolute basics that you need to know to to function in the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences. But I often find that these basic things that we teach the EEP students, very often the mainstream students don't know these basics, like gender terminology, race terminology, that we work with all, throughout the year. And then I'm wondering, like, if our students go out into the world today, they have to know all these basics about gender and race and ethnicity. And very often you can offend people without having the intention, and yeah, just the way that we sometimes use bias in language. I'm wondering if there's anything like that, for example, for engineering students and for the natural sciences students. Yeah, that was. Maybe I can also say something that in our course, for example, we also invite guest lecturers from the Faculty of Science, for example, paleontologists and people who work with genetics and so on, so that we have that sound scientific basis when we talk about something like the virus or yeah, all these myths that are flying around on WhatsApp at the moment. So it's not as if I feel that only that we must teach them something. I mean, it's this interdisciplinary cooperation that I'm actually enthusiastic about. So I'm sure there are also some natural science facts that every one of us should know. It should be second nature for us. But yeah, I'm thinking about this, closer cooperation so that we can, know the basics. Thank you.
Anita, I think you're raising a very valid point, and there were discussions in the program renewal reference group. On the one hand, should we have themes? So we are still teaching them how to engage ethically with sources, but instead of just using random sources, we pick themes like ethnicity or gender issues or how to view the world through an African lens. So I agree with you. Those are important things because, as I said earlier, we should always be thinking about the kind of graduate we want students in these faculties to be. What kind of person, not just kind of graduate, but what kind of person. So those kind of questions that you've raised are things that they should know. But the one thing that I always have to remember, especially as a postgraduate, mostly postgraduate learning a designer or curriculum designer, is that this is a 6-credit first-year module. Somebody from another university, a friend of mine at another university said, and perhaps Anita, you can defend the students here, but she said, don't expect too much of the first-year students because sometimes they struggle for 2 weeks to find the lecture hall. And maybe that's unfair towards the students, but I've heard that students are sometimes so overwhelmed at starting university that you just kind of have to calm them down and then give them some stuff that they can use. But I agree with you that those kind of themes can be incorporated in this kind of knowledge that I talk about, the knowledge that you can use. So definitely, I think those are important things.
Thank you, Anita and Marenet. And I think our last question is going to come from Adeline.
Thanks very much, Marenet. I'm actually so satisfied and glad to be able to think that I'm more or less on the right track if I listen to you about knowledge skills. But I wanted to say that actually the Language Centre is really into doing knowledge skills and not only academic literacies. So science in context and intercultural communication and so forth, this is exactly what we're trying to do. And we're also trying to go in the direction of multimedia and not only having like a technical report at the end for summative assessment and so on. But I just wanted to mention that actually the Language Centre can be called in as a collaborator if you're looking for people to help with the assessment of language-related issues. So this is something that we would be glad to be contracted for, that not only the way we're doing it in some of the faculties, but people who need extra language graders for their summative assessments, you're very welcome to remember the Language Centre for that.
Thank you very much. I'm not the one who decides about who gets the money, so but thank you very much. I will keep that in mind because I think we can certainly learn from you as well.
Thank you, Adeline, for that, and thank you, Marenet. And again, just thank you very, very much, Marenet, for your wonderful presentation, for everything we could learn from you. But I think I'm going to hand over to Gerda just to thank you formally from the Auxin structure, as it were. Gerda?
Hi, yes, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Corin. Yes, it is a deep felt thanks, and it's not a very formal thanks, Marenet, because it is, as colleagues have been saying, you have been brave to consider how a curriculum could look if we take students' point of view into the process. And we also heard about the way you look at it longitudinally and small class, large class solutions. So all of that was very instructive and helpful to many of us, and we can see, as Karen also pointed out, there were applause for you. So thanks very much, Marenet, for your contribution. Perhaps you should take the opportunity to also clarify if I pronounce your name incorrectly. And thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Gerda. It's actually Marenet.
Okay.
It sounds more French if you say it like that. Let me also just thank you for the opportunity, and once again to Karen especially for the guidance she has given me over the past couple of years in terms of the scholarship of teaching and learning. Thank you.
Yeah, Marenet, one of the things we get from you today are so many instances of your point that we are in this together. Yes, certainly. So thanks a lot for your presentation. And then colleagues, thank you for joining us. We are together here in Auxin again on 20 July, and Max Blackie will be our presenter then. And yeah, there's also a thank you from Anita, and we've seen in the chat quite a lot of thanks. Thanks, Marenet. Thanks, colleagues, and goodbye.